He entered America's Got Talent as an Indiana school janitor and left with a victory that no one had anticipated. However, the viral moment, the confetti, and the ovation concealed something even more startling and tragic than the act that made him famous. Richard made a decision at the end of the season that left people speechless and truly made them wonder what was going on behind the scenes. His journey was unforgettable, his ascent was emotional, and the reality he ultimately revealed was unexpected. What is Richard doing right now, and where is he today? You'll be truly surprised by the response. How Richard was discovered by the world. Through a straightforward moment caught inside a middle school where he had worked for the majority of his professional life, Richard Goodall was introduced to the world in a way that even he had never anticipated. Richard started singing like he often did when kids gathered at Westview Middle School in Terre in 2022 as he was wrapping up another day. Without knowing what would happen next, someone took out a phone at that same moment, recorded him singing "Don't Stop Believing," and uploaded it to the internet. His voice had already started to spread by the time he got back to work the next morning. First on TikTok, then on all the social media sites that thrive on spontaneous events. The video was shared right away, and as the number of views increased, the national media took note. The video was replayed by news organizations. Applause-filled comment sections. Television producers and talent scouts soon began to take notice as well. Despite the commotion, Richard continued to get up early, put on his work shirt, and show up for his job, something he had been doing for over 20 years. People were unaware of Richard's unfamiliarity with this type of attention. From the start, his life had been straightforward, stable, and firmly anchored in Indiana. He was born in Indianapolis and lived in Terre for nearly his whole life. He developed habits and found contentment in the things that most people take for granted. He was more than just the janitor at Westview Middle School. While cleaning the cafeteria, he would hum and sing along to classic rock songs, greet children with a smile, and make them laugh when they were having a bad day. He was seen by the students every day, and he eventually assimilated into the school's culture. Therefore, the opportunity was nearly overwhelming when America's Got Talent approached out. Prior to this, Richard had never been on an airplane. He had never crossed the nation or entered a setting with millions of viewers, bright lights, and cameras. He only had his voice, his nervousness, and the encouragement of a community that had been rooting for him since that first viral video as he took a plane to Los Angeles for the first time in his life in May 2024. The majority of music candidates have been practicing for the America's Got Talent stage for a long time. For Richard, however, it was a step into a world he had only previously observed from afar. Music, his uneasiness was initially subtle when he stepped onto the stage, but it became more apparent when he introduced himself. However, something familiar reappeared as soon as the music began. His demeanor shifted, his voice calmed, and then the timid Indiana janitor's performance filled the auditorium with a sense of intimacy and strength. "Don't Stop Believing," he sang, as the judges leaned in. As the crowd stood up, Heidi Klum made the choice that would forever alter his life. Richard was left speechless, overcome with emotion, and overcome with a moment that was much greater than he could have ever dreamed of when she reached for the golden bell and the confetti began to fall. He viewed the tournament as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity after that. Each performance evolved into a means of paying tribute to those who had stood by him long before the cameras were even there. He sang the song "How Am I Supposed to Live Without You" in the quarterfinals, dedicating it to his fiancée Angie. His conviction made the song seem intimate, even to those who were unfamiliar with him. He displayed a whole different side of himself when he returned for the semifinals with "Eye of the Tiger," putting on a stronger, more enthusiastic performance that demonstrated he was more than simply a viral sensation. His presence and range made him a contender. He knew deep down that he was representing the people who had helped him get there by the time he made it to the finals. Richard returned to the band that had unintentionally influenced this phase of his life in the conclusion. He gave a sincere performance, putting all of his feelings and experiences into the song. Richard Goodall was declared the America's Got Talent Season 19 champion soon after. This poignant moment, which seemed even larger than the show itself, was characterized by the confetti, the lights, and the clapping. This was more than just a win. Every invisible effort and every instance in which he continued to sing despite the fact that no one in the industry was paying attention was validated. However, there was a tragic undertone to all of that achievement, which helped to explain why his performances were so emotionally stirring. The victory was broadcast to the world. But the wounds behind the voice were invisible to them. Even more about the man America fell in love with is revealed by that aspect of his story. Behind the voice are the wounds. From the outside, Richard Goodall's ascent may have seemed abrupt, but in reality, he had been carrying years of disappointment long before America heard him sing a single song. In an attempt to get a break or at least a chance to be seen, he had previously tried auditioning for The Voice. However, it didn't work out. No encouragement, no callback, simply the kind of silence that we artists are all too familiar with. Like most individuals do when they are rejected, he returned to his life following that disappointment. Silently, without grumbling, and resolved to continue. His desire of becoming famous felt like something he put back on a shelf, hoping it would still be important in the future, but music remained a part of his life. A little gospel band provided him with solace and motivation to continue singing for a while. Together, they constructed something solid, traveled, and played. However, everything abruptly stopped when the pandemic struck. Events came to an end, venues closed, and the band he had relied on disintegrated entirely. Although it wasn't anyone's fault, Richard had to negotiate yet another empty area. He had to start over in terms of confidence after losing the band, which meant losing one of the few places where his voice was heard. However, nothing could have prepared Richard for the most difficult chapter. Richard lost Patricia Sue, his first wife, to kidney cancer in 2021. She had supported him even when he doubted himself, and she had been his companion for so many years. Everything changed when she passed away. It was more than grief. It was the unexpected sensation of being freed. They had lost the habits they had established together. It was a different house. The days seemed to drag on forever. Because it was who he was, he showed up for work. On the inside, though, he was figuring out how to live a life he no longer recognized. Such a loss does not go away. You have it with you. And you could hear the weight in his voice when he finally started singing again. When his life had reached its pinnacle following America's Got Talent, he experienced yet another unforeseen turn of events. He was pushed so hard by the hectic schedule of rehearsals, travel, interviews, and new duties that his body finally made him calm down. In 2024, he had hernia surgery, which he needed but initially kept a secret. He had to retreat from all he had been pursuing in order to heal from the surgery. It allowed him to reflect, to take a deep breath, to realize how much his life had changed in such a little time. However, life became less burdensome. Richard rediscovered love in between grief and rebuilding. She was named Angie, and she came into his life in 2022, long before he became well-known thanks to America's Got Talent. She didn't consider him a celebrity or a viral sensation. The man behind it all was visible to her. The one who bore so much of his narrative in silence, who worried and hoped. She eventually turned into the person he relied on, the one who supported him during the competition's highs and lows and who reminded him that he was worthy of more than sporadic joy. And she was the voice encouraging him to keep trying when the pressure from America's Got Talents was at its peak. In reality, they got married a few days before the show's finale, not for attention, but because she gave him a sense of fulfillment in life. But Angie did more than that. She also encouraged him to search his own past for solutions, which he had never ventured to do before. Richard didn't know his biological father growing up. He accepted the fact that the place remained unused for years. However, Angie felt that he should have closure and an opportunity to comprehend his origins. He looked, encouraged by her, and was taken aback by what he discovered. His father, a retired Army veteran and K-9 officer, was still alive and led a life entirely different from Richard's. 3 siblings Richard had never met before accompanied him. The moment felt greater than all of them when they eventually connected. He shared the news on his social media account saying, "Thanks to Ancestry and Angie, I found my biological father. He is a retired K-9 police officer in Indy, not to mention a retired Army veteran. He has no children, so you can imagine his shock to find out after all these years he has a son. While I can't tell you the whole story, he wasn't even told I existed. And he used to play drums, guitar, and mandolin. A huge thank you to my Angie. Had it not been for her, I wouldn't have tried to look. This new relationship didn't erase the past, but it definitely added a sense of belonging. He didn't know he had been missing to his future. Through everything he experienced, the people in his community stayed supportive. Even when America's Got Talent required him to fly to Los Angeles, it wasn't a corporation or a sponsorship that covered his travel. It was regular people, friends, neighbors, and strangers who had watched his TikTok clip and recognized a piece of themselves in him. They pulled their money, set up fundraisers, and made sure he had everything he needed to simply step onto that stage. But even with everything he'd been through, nothing prepared people for what he decided next. It was a choice that caught everyone off guard. A decision that changed the direction of his story in a way no one saw coming. The choice that shocked everyone. Nobody expected Richard's next move. Not the audience who voted for him. Not the reporters waiting outside the studio, not even some of the fans who had followed every step of his journey. After winning America's Got Talent, most people assumed he would trade in his janitor badge for a full-time music career. They pictured him signing contracts, moving to bigger cities, and leaving behind the life he had known for decades. But the moment the cameras stopped rolling, Richard made a decision that said far more about who he really is than any performance ever could. He chose to go back to work as a janitor at West VGO Middle School, the same building he had left before the finale. When interviewers asked why, he didn't make a dramatic statement or try to turn it into a grand lesson. He kept it simple. He explained that he planned to continue working at the school while new opportunities pop up and that he never expected to win in the first place. In fact, the whole experience still felt unreal to him. During the competition, he often said, America's Got Talent was anyone's game, and he meant it. He didn't walk in thinking he was destined to take the title. He walked in hoping people would understand how much singing meant to him. That was it. Fame wasn't the dream. Expression was. He wanted to share what he loved with people who might connect to it. And the show became the doorway that allowed that to happen. Believe it or not, Richard actually liked where he worked. He liked the kids. He liked the staff. He liked the structure of waking up and being part of a place that had shaped so much of his life. Music, even with a national platform behind him, he didn't feel the need to run from the life he had before all the cameras arrived. Returning to the school grounded him in the routines that made sense, even as everything else around him changed. But staying grounded didn't mean turning away from new experiences. After the competition, invitations began to roll in, and he welcomed each one with the same sincerity people had grown to love. He performed at an Indiana Pacers game where thousands of fans heard his voice echo across the arena. Not long after, he took the stage at the Circle of Lights, a cherished holiday event in Indiana that drew crowds excited to see their hometown winner in person. He opened a show for Howie Mandel, bringing his story full circle from contestant, music, to colleague. He even appeared at the Riverside Festival of Lights. Another moment that helped introduce his voice to audiences who had only seen him through a screen before. These appearances simply added new chapters to the life he was already living. His hometown embraced him in a way that made the first viral moment feel like only the beginning. He received a key to the city, an honor that showed how deeply people felt connected to his story. West VGO Middle School held a pep rally in his honor, celebrating not just his win, but the way he carried himself through the entire journey. Students cheered for the man who had cheered for them for years. Teachers cried and families showed up to thank him for representing the community with such sincerity. And even as he celebrated these new experiences, Richard continued posting photos of himself doing the same work he had always done. Cleaning classrooms, waxing floors, and getting ready for another school day. Balancing public recognition with everyday routine could have been overwhelming for someone else. But Richard didn't treat the attention like a burden or a spotlight he needed to run toward. He treated it like an extension of his life, not a replacement for it. While music and performance became part of him in a larger way, he held on to the stability of his job while allowing the music world to open slowly and naturally without forcing anything or rushing into deals he didn't feel ready for. And that steady approach created space for what came next. Because while he returned to his job, he didn't pause on his dream. His music career was beginning, and this journey would show just how far his voice could take him. Surprisingly, the start of his music career didn't come from a record label or a TV appearance. It came from a decision that pushed him into the world of professional music in a way he had never experienced before. The start of his music career. Richard decided to approach his music career slowly, almost cautiously, like someone stepping into a room they had only ever looked at from the doorway. The entertainment world can be loud, demanding, and fast. But Richard understood something most new performers don't. He didn't need to convince people he was worthy of attention. His performances had already done that. What he wanted was to grow at a pace that felt natural, a pace that let him stay connected to the life he came from while stepping into the one he was building. This approach carried into his first major musical milestone. His debut single, Long Time Coming, was released on August 29, 2025. A date fans marked in their calendars the moment he announced it. The announcement came in a heartfelt social media post that read, "Hi, this is Richard. All I wanted to do was tell you my tale. I frequently wake up feeling like the luckiest man alive because it's been such an incredible adventure. Many of you have asked what I'm doing next, and I'm excited to share with you all that my single, Long Time Coming, will be released on August 29 on all streaming platforms." He recorded the track in Nashville, a city that blends history with new beginnings, and the process gave him a chance to discover himself as an artist outside the competition stage. He shared hints of the song on social media, small previews that revealed the tone and feeling behind it. Every clip carried the same sincerity people were drawn to from the beginning. While crafting his own material, he didn't isolate himself from the community that helped shape his musical instincts. He joined a local group called Sugar Street, performing with them as he built his solo brand. These smaller shows gave him the space to experiment and find his footing without the overwhelming pressure of national attention. The band's rhythm, the local crowds, and the familiar atmosphere reminded him why he loved singing long before the world even knew his name. Working with new managers helped him navigate opportunities that came his way. But nothing about his approach felt rushed. The focus was on building something stable and long-lasting. As his music career began to take shape, another unexpected opportunity opened up. Publishers began expressing interest in telling his story in book form with all the elements people connect with: perseverance, loss, hope, and an unexpected rise. Discussions began about a potential book deal. And while nothing was finalized, the fact that people wanted to put his life into pages said a lot about how deeply his story resonated. Angie, his wife, even hinted that a biopic might be possible someday. When someone asked Richard who should play him in a movie, he laughed and said, "Zac Efron." While it was a joke, it showed how comfortable he was becoming with the attention. Even as he moved into new creative spaces, his connection with the show that introduced him to the world remained strong. During the 20th anniversary special of America's Got Talent, Richard returned to the stage and opened the night with Eye of the Tiger, a performance that felt both nostalgic and refreshed. He shared the stage with a massive ensemble of past contestants, creating a moment that blended old memories with new energy backstage. He watched his old audition from months earlier. The same clip that had lifted him from Indiana and carried him into the national spotlight. Seeing it again hit him harder than he expected. It wasn't just a video anymore. It was a marker of everything that had changed since the day he stepped onto that stage for the first time. That night also brought him back to the moment that had once felt almost unreal. Performing with Neil Schon, he described sharing the stage with Jury's guitarist as a dream come true. The kind of experience he never believed he would have in his lifetime. It served as a reminder of how many doors had opened since the show ended. Doors he never anticipated. Doors he walked through with gratitude instead of pressure. And then just when people thought they understood the direction his story was heading, he revealed something that caught almost everyone by surprise. A confirmation that shifted the story once again and hinted at a chapter nobody expected. The confirmation we didn't expect. By 2025, people had already formed their own ideas about Richard Goodall's future. Some believed his time on television would be a beautiful memory he'd look back on while returning to his everyday life. Others assumed he would struggle to break into an industry that moves fast and rarely waits for anyone. But the truth came directly from Richard himself in a simple and honest way that caught everyone's attention. He confirmed what fans had been quietly hoping. Music wasn't just a chapter in his life. It was the direction he intended to walk toward without turning back. Singing in school hallways, humming during lunch breaks, sharing familiar rock songs with students. Those weren't hobbies he used to pass time. They were pieces of him. They were the most natural parts of his day. When he said that America's Got Talent simply gave him a bigger stage, he wasn't trying to sound poetic or dramatic. He meant it. Everything he had done on that show was an extension of who he already was. The cameras didn't create his passion. They just amplified it. And that confirmation shifted the entire narrative around him. He wasn't a one-season success story or a lucky viral sensation. He was a man stepping fully into the career he had waited his whole life to pursue. The clearest example of that shift came in November 2025 at the VO County YMCA Inspiration Gala, a community gathering in Terre, the city that had known him long before talent shows ever existed in his world. The audience filled the room with a kind of energy that only comes from people who feel personally invested in someone's journey. When Richard walked onto the stage as the headliner, he performed his new single, A Long Time Coming, giving the crowd a first look at the direction his music was headed. He followed the new song with Don't Stop Believing, the one that changed everything for him. People sang along, families swayed together, teachers smiled through tears. The gala raised money for scholarships to help children attend summer camp and YMCA programs, something that made the night feel bigger than entertainment. It was a moment that captured everything Richard valued: community, connection, and purpose. As his commitment to music deepened, he also began thinking about the future in practical terms. His job at West VO Middle School had been a central part of his identity for years. But as his schedule grew and opportunities widened, he found himself thinking seriously about retiring from the school. It wasn't an easy decision, but it came from a place of growth. He had entered a new stage of life shaped by music, travel, and a partnership that mattered deeply to him. He talked about wanting to start a chapter with Angie that reflected the life they were building together. The idea of retirement didn't feel like an ending. It felt like a step towards something meaningful. This step led to another possibility which carried excitement and a sense of renewal. Richard and Angie have reportedly begun exploring the idea of moving to Florida. The state offers warmth, a lifestyle that feels more relaxing, and the chance to settle somewhere that matches the pace they want. He's spoken openly about wanting to buy a home. Not a mansion or something extravagant, just a place where he could work on music, rest between commitments, and spend his days enjoying his new life. As Richard and Angie planned out what their next few years might look like, he also started putting real steps in place for the career he was building. He opened up about wanting to collaborate with Simon Cowell in the future. Working with the man who helped introduce him to the country felt like a natural direction for everything he'd started. He also began exploring ideas for a full album, thinking through the kind of songs that truly represent him. Alongside that, conversations are forming around live tours and brand partnerships. Each one fitting the genuine image people connected with from the beginning. Even as all of this picked up, he stayed close to the supporters who helped lift him from the start. He continued posting updates online, sharing moments from recording sessions and little pieces of his everyday life. Fans responded in a big way. Many told him his journey gave them hope, especially those who felt overlooked or believed they had waited too long to chase their own dreams. Richard took those messages to heart, especially because he understood what it felt like to wonder if your moment had passed, and because he wanted people to know that their support mattered to him. By all accounts, Richard hasn't left his job at West VGO Middle School. He's still there, still doing the work he's always done. Even as his music career continues to grow, it's simply where things stand right now. He's stepping into new opportunities, building toward a future in music, and keeping the job that supported him for most of his life. And maybe that's the part people connect with the most. Music, he's moving forward without pretending he has everything figured out. This is just the beginning for him, and he's taking it one step at a time. Do you think Richard Goodall should quit his janitor job at the school? Tell us in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click on the next video on your screen, like this video, and subscribe to our channel for more updates.